to order. Get organized here. There we go. On roll call, Mr. Cassidy,
Here.
Mr. Podak,
Here.
and myself, all committee members are present. We do have minutes to approve from the February 11th meeting. They're in a paper format because it was done during the day and it was not recorded. So if I could have a motion to approve,
So move. Second.
and on roll call, Mr. Podak,
Yes.
Mr. Cassidy,
Yes.
and myself. The meeting minutes of February 11th have been approved. Okay, at this point, we'll turn it over to the finance director if you have any old or new business for us.
Well, a couple things on new business. We're preparing for the annual audit, which the field work will begin. The auditors will be on site the week of April 7th. We have a new auditing firm this year, Charles Harris. We came off a 3-year contract and we're required by law to put that back out for bid, and we did, working with the auditor of state in doing that. And Charles E. Harris is our auditors for the next 3 years. I don't know if it falls under new or old, but I did provide everybody a summary of the splash pad costs and where we're at with that. And the total project came in at $1,550,000. I know a lot of times people were saying, oh, it's a $500,000 splash pad. I don't know, that was prior to me being here, but I can tell you the splash pad itself might have been just a $500,000 project, but the new restrooms, which we got a grant for, added almost another $500,000 to that project. And then there was demolition design work as well. And then really at the end of the day, what caught up to us, this project, I went back and looked, we issued our first purchase order on this back in 2022 for the design work. So inflation alone has eaten up, and when we got revised quotes back in, $150,000 just in construction inflation in comparing the original estimate. They had to add about $150,000 to that. Bottom line is this, we're forecasting about $1.5 million for the project. We did issue some POs and had some carryover POs from last year. So I think the mayor and I both shared at our last meeting that we're going to come back to you asking for an additional $550,000. The resolutions for $453,000. The difference being we had already incurred some of that overage last year. And in essence, what we did is we issued POs for the demolition last year, for some soil testing last year, and for the design work. So that's all been encumbered in prior years and carried over into this year. So in terms of adding to this year's budget, we only need to add $453,000. If you look at the legislation to change the fiscal or update our fiscal recovery plan, you'll see that even with this additional transfer out of the general fund into the park fund, we're projecting a fund balance at the end of the year of $10.4 million. And then taking that all the way out through 2029, in 2029, it does dip down to 9.6 million. But understand, we pretty much forecasted flat revenue all 5 years. So it's a very conservative estimate, but even at $9.6 million, the city still will have over 250 days of cash on hand forecasted out. So while this is a significant amount, it doesn't put the general fund at risk. And I think it's really important to understand the general fund at one point in time was the reason we ended up in fiscal emergency. It was down to a balance under $1 million. The hard work has been done by you guys, administration, and the citizens in getting that fund healthy to the tune of $10 million. So it's not the general fund that keeps us in fiscal emergency. It is the proprietary or water sewer funds, and specifically it's the water fund. That's the reason we're in fiscal emergency today. It's not why we ended up starting there, but that's where we're at today. So I don't want people to look at this and say, well, you're in fiscal emergency, you can't really afford it. The general fund can afford it. Again, the heavy lifting's been done. Now, it's up to administration and council to make sure that we don't let that fund go back down to a point where we're going to be at risk. But I'm comfortable in telling you that based on this forecast and what we've done with transfers, because also included in this fiscal recovery was the $208,000 that we moved. So the general fund is solid. It can afford to make this kind of transfer. It's not something that we want to come back to you every month or even more than twice a year or any time to really ask for. But in this case, this project, should you choose to go forward, is affordable through the general fund. Understand the park fund is primarily funded through the general fund. We allocate $30,000 a year from our income tax collections into the park fund. Anything else in the park fund comes from the general. And that is standard procedure for pretty much every municipality, unless you have a special park district levy out there. For example, the Seneca County Park District, they have a levy out there and that's how they're funded. But for the city of Tiffin, their parks are funded through their general fund as well.
Could you just add one thing? Correct me if I'm wrong, but there were a couple things that were taken out of the original. You know, we bid the project, came back too high,
Yeah.
and then they
took
rewrote
out
the specs.
They redid the specs and took out some of the what I would call the fun stuff in the splash pad, because that was the first question I asked when we got the quotes back a second time. All right, what else can we take out? And the design team said, if you want a splash pad, you're going to keep what you have in there for a splash pad. So, but there were some of those accoutrements, per se, taken out, yes. And then we put some alternates in, but at the end of the day, we believe those alternates should be done anyway. We need lighting out there. We need to do the landscaping. So we want to make it look nice.
I guess I'll reiterate what I said at the last meeting. I really think we need to move forward with it. I think that without probably directly putting it in stone, that we pretty much gave the impression to the citizens that we were going to do this. We were going to do it. Looking ahead, it will attract younger families to the community. It will attract more people into Fostoria. I personally think it's going to end up being a good investment rather than an expenditure.
I don't believe the general fund could support a new pool. I believe it can support the splash pad for sure. One thing that I believe Councilperson Lehman, you had asked last time, how are we doing with income tax receipts? I can tell you through the first quarter, and I hesitate to get too excited about it because it's only 3 months and there's a lot of timing with income tax payments. But through the first quarter, we're up $230,000 compared to the prior year. So if you remember last year, we were flat and kind of trailed most of the year, and then we finally caught up and had about a 1% increase. We're actually up a little over 10% in the first quarter. So
that's hopeful.
Yeah.
Hopeful indication.
Yeah. A quarter does not make a trend.
Correct.
And Steve, the 100,000 for the inclusive playground, that's budgeted too?
That yes. So if you look at the bottom of this analysis, these are all the projects that are budgeted into the park fund.
Right.
And the only one changing, and that 100,000 is our share of that inclusive playground.
Well, I think putting the two together, I've been to both of their fundraisers, and I think putting the splash pad and that together is going to be an amazing thing for the citizens and kids.
And the only I'm sorry, anything else on the splash pad before I move on? The only other thing I had is I did share with you our investment portfolio at Red Tree Investments. And if you would like, we can have Ryan from Red Tree come in either in March or in April. Let me know if you have a preference one way or another, and I'll work with him to make sure he is available to meet with finance to go over that. Our maturities are on average for that portfolio 1.8 years, so not quite 2 years. The only thing potentially we could do different with that is we may want him to look at some of those, I think it's the CDs that are on a shorter maturity. Yeah, we have 5 million in CDs with a weighted average maturity of 1.3. I believe he's laddered those, but if we wanted to take that out a little bit, potentially could do that.
I am of the opinion that we need to lengthen that maturity out, at least get some money out there a little further if the rate is advantageous. And we won't know if that's a good rate till it comes that time.
Mhm.
Couple, 3, 4 years from now. But I know from my experience and what I'm seeing in 1 through 5 year fixed rates right now, we should be able to pull at least a 4, maybe even higher, if we can do something for 5 years with a portion. And the only reason I think that we should look at that is that with the projection, with the budget, and, you know, having a carryover projected for the next 4 years of 10 million, and we've got 5 million in the one custodial account. So with a total portfolio of 7, I think we got room for another million, especially if we've got things maturing, which we do. So, and some of it's short term.
Yeah, so what's going to happen is in March here, 750,000 of those CDs matured and get reinvested, and more than likely will be reinvested in a 3-year CD, assuming that's the best
Right.
rate. And that's where we rely on their investment expertise. And when they live it. Bob, you live it. I don't live it. So I do rely on their input on that. But if you'd like Ryan to come in and share some thoughts and share our expectations with him, happy to do that.
Would you like him to attend next month?
Yeah, what, April? Yes.
Okay.
April? When are those other CDs coming up?
The next set won't mature until July.
Okay, and the reason I asked that is perhaps we could ask Ryan if he's, because I know having worked with him in the past, he may be up in the vicinity seeing a school district or another
Mhm.
municipality, and maybe we could make it easier for him if he could do 2 in one trip, because he's coming from Cincinnati.
I will check with him and let him know what we're trying to accomplish and see when he can come and visit.
Okay. Anything else from you?
No.
No. Committee members, did either of you want to bring anything up? I have a couple items, but if you'd like to go first. No? Okay.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay.
We had entered an agreement. I forgot to bring my file for the recouping the services of that we provide on medical, the ambulance service. Is that flowing? Are they collecting money? Are we seeing any activity on that or?
I do have nothing to report at this stage. That's not to say nothing's happening. I just have not sat with the fire chief to see if anything different
Maybe
is
that's something we
happening.
could address put on
I'll put
our
that on.
radar and
Yep. I can report back at the next
There
finance.
was a lag, there was gonna be a
Mhm.
lag between their effort and we would see the money, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
For some reason, I think it was like August till we'd see any money.
Okay.
But
And we have not, so if you remember that agreement, we funded in essence part of that and got it back later. We have not done any funding of that at this point. So
that means it's not started.
I
Correct.
believe you are correct, but I want to work with the fire chief and better understand where we're at with it.
What's a good idea to circle back? Um, two things that I wanted to bring up. For anybody who wasn't at the last meeting, we brought again the Q&A for water and sewer rates. There seems to be a lot of folks that don't necessarily understand that our sewer rates and our water rates specifically are what's keeping us in fiscal emergency. And we're very constrained as to how we can raise funds to put in those in order to offset fee increases to our residents. And that Q&A will help people understand some of the complexity around that. With that being said, part two I wanted to discuss was we've been talking about the frustration that we feel that we are unable to post the interest that would be earned on these idle funds that are sitting in our investments, Star Ohio, Red Tree. That money is going back to the general fund. And we are being told that we can't accrue those interest earnings to the water and sewer funds. So we did a little research on that, and I've provided a report to everyone tonight. My findings is that I found 5 communities that their CAFR reports show that they are accruing interest to both their water and sewer funds. I contacted 2 of those cities, and just to make sure that what I was reading on their financial statements was water and sewer income coming from investments. And they said yes, that they are accruing those interest earnings to those funds. And they're going through audits and not having any conflict with that procedure. One city went to I kind of quizzed them on how they can do that when we're being told that we can't. And they provided me with a resolution that their city council passed that authorizes the auditor to post the interest back to those funds in a pro rata fashion. So on this research document that I've given you, it gives you an example of how, had we been able to take those earnings from 2024 and post them to those funds, how much it would have been. Thanks to Mr. Dandrian, he gave me that. And then how that would relate to the fee increases that we had to apply to our residents. So for example, in 2024, had we been able to apply those interest allocations back to these funds, the water fund would have received $36,517. The increase that is taking place in 2025 is expected to generate $566,668. So that does not seem like much, but it is something. It is a way to put money back into that fund without other than collecting a fee from residents. On the sewer fund, however, the interest allocation would have amounted to $142,839, and the rate increase for 2025 is expected to generate $161,772. So as you can see in that instance, had we been allowed to post that interest back to that fund, it would have nearly offset that increase that we had to pass on to the residents. So I wanted to provide that to you guys and ask us to consider how we want to move forward. I've put 3 options here. We can just take the information and take no action on it, continue to post the interest earnings to the general fund, or I would propose that we authorize the law director to craft some kind of a resolution. One could be just to require the interest earnings to follow back to the fund. The other option would be to authorize the council to make an annual election. So at the advice of the finance director, he could say, when I'm budgeting and I'm projecting that income, my recommendation is that the water revenue follows it, but the sewer funds go back to the general fund, or something like that, based upon the knowledge that we have about our financial position. And if council didn't take any action, then it would just follow going back to the general fund as it is now. So I don't know what your opinions are on that, but those were my findings, and that would be my recommendation, that we do something to try and help the increases to our residents.
The thing that amazes me, I'm looking at a document that goes back to 1978.
Yeah.
Just go back and fast forward up till now if we'd have been able to do that.
Now, to be fair, I did talk to one city that they don't want the revenue to go to the water, and so it suits them for it. They want it to go back to the general fund. I'm not sure what's happening in their city that serves them better, but they're in the position to know. In our case, I don't see a time in the near future that, particularly for water, that it's going to benefit us to send it back to the general fund. I think the water definitely needs to.
I think for the sake of planning and not having to look at it every year, because we're awfully close on the sewer as far as it could offset an increase, I think I'd choose option number 2 to proceed, because that way you know going in that it's going to go back. Not that we can always go back and new resolution, say, hey, no, we want to change it, we'll send it back to the general fund. But to be transparent going in, that way we know that all the interest earnings from both the water and sewer fund won't go into the general fund. They're going to go to those enterprise funds. And if that was the case, a couple good years, hopefully, the way it's budgeted, we should be out of fiscal emergency anyway. The
Yeah.
sewer fund's already good enough to be out,
Right,
but the water fund's what's holding us back.
right.
So really, we have time that we can have the proper legislation crafted and get this to where we can
Correct.
start 2026.
Oh, I think even sooner. I don't know how.
Yeah, we could actually start it
Well,
We can.
30
lot of
days
things
after
are
it's passed.
emergencies. This could be an emergency.
Could be an emergency, and as soon as it's passed, we could start that allocation going forward.
I really think it should be read 3 times, but at the same time,
Mhm.
yeah, it could be done anytime.
If the committee wants to move forward, I would suggest then that we make a motion to move forward with option 2 and pass that off to the law director to start drafting that for council's action.
So moved.
Second,
And on roll call, Mr. Cassidy,
Yes.
Mr. Podak,
yes.
and myself. That item has passed. That is it for me. Is there anybody from the public that wanted to speak on finance-related items?
Well,
Yeah, they're not here.
yeah, they are. Don's in the back.
Oh,
Maddie's right there.
apologize. Did either of you have anything you wanted to discuss finance? I didn't mean to bypass you when I didn't see you there
Mayor,
till the regular.
anything on finance?
Would just say that I think Sue hit the nail on the head with that resolution, because I think the reason we can't do it is because we haven't passed the resolution. As a charter city under home rule, we have to make our own rules. So I think if you pass that resolution, we'll be in good shape.
Okay, we'll sure give it a try. Yes, you should.
Hi, I'm Jill Filliater, 402 West Culbertson Street. I just got on the tail end. My only concern, and I'm all for it, but please, let's do it the 3 read. We do so many emergencies that this could go the 3 reads, because we overuse the 3 read rule quite a bit in this city. So if you could look at that and just try to consider doing that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, if not, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move?
Second.
And on roll call, Mr. Podak,
Yes.
Mr. Cassidy,
Yes.
and we are adjourned at 5:57.
Next meeting.